Some people are like, I don't know about that guy. I'm not too sure, right? I mean, really and truly, where would you stand with that, okay?
Credibility.
My credibility, yeah, right? You know, is Ben someone we can trust, right? Is he a guy that he can stand up and says a couple of things and, yeah, I think he's legit? Or is it like Donna's like, here goes Ben Green again. And just, all right, okay, you better be taking everything he says with a grain of salt.
I know your wife, so I think
Okay, that's good, thank goodness. You know she's going to keep me in line, that's right. And so, you know, I've been trying to help the youth group recently. So what do you think it takes for them to believe? Because everybody's on a different journey in faith, right? You know, connection, right? Knowing things. This is some things we talked about with Jesus. I was trying to convince them that Jesus is our compass. He is our guide, right? He is the path we're supposed to follow, right? So how do I do that? How do I get our youth to think about that? I want you to see this just really quickly. I know this isn't what our class is about. So we spent some weeks about who is Jesus, why should you listen to him, right? His ethos, right? You know, Jesus is the light in the world from John 1, right? He's the King of Kings, right? He's the Alpha and he's the Omega, right? He enables us to be born and again, and he fulfills the law once and for all time. Like, those are some points I took over about like 5 or 6 weeks to kind of convince kids that this is why you need to listen to Jesus. Because not everybody shows up to church or youth group firmly convinced that Jesus is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. You know, and we have to realize that. Some people come into church and they're still searching, they're looking, right? They're figuring it out. Some people come to the youth group just because their mom and dad brought them. Not because that's what they believe, right? Not all of them, right? That's not what I'm saying, right? You know, but, you know, we have to work out our belief in what we think, you know. And if I did something stupid like a magic trick, I'm not going to do one. That would take too long, and I'm a terrible magician, right? I know. What a big disappointment, right? If we have time at the end, I'll try one. But, you know, seriously, if I told you I was going to show you what your card was, would you believe me? Would you need that proof? Would you need that evidence? I mean, magicians do it all the time, right? They say, hey, I'm going to show you this. This is the trick I'm going to do. I'm going to levitate. I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And we're all thinking in the back of our head, show me, right? Let me see it, all right? How can I trust you, right? So let's think about that in context of Exodus a little bit today. So first of all, can you trust the promises that God makes? Yes, absolutely 100%, right? So let's look at the promises that God's making to Abraham, right? Let's look at Genesis 12 briefly, right? So God says, I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing, right? In 13, the Lord said to Abraham, after Lot had parted from him, look around where you are, to the north and south, to the east and west. All the land that you see I will give to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go, walk the length and breadth of the land, for I'm giving it to you. Okay? And if we look at 15 just a little bit more, okay? This is right after, you know, Abraham had fought some battles and everything, right? And 1 through 6, you know, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abraham. I am your shield and your great reward. But Abraham said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless? And the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abraham said, you have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him, this man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, look up at the sky and count the stars. If indeed you can count them, then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. And Abraham believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. Abraham believed God. He believed what he said. Right? Do you think he had a hard time with that? Envisioning that and seeing that? Or was it immediate? Well, what happens not long after this? Do we remember? He makes up his own plan, right? You know, we have the Hagar Ishmael thing and all that, correct? So, okay, yeah, I think he believed, right? But he was doing his own plan, not God's plan. And then when he heard that he was going to have, you know, a child when he's, 90 or whatever, right? What do they think of that one? Okay, whatever. Is it just the same idea with the cards, the magic trick? You can't, no, that's not going to happen. You're not going to do that. How can that occur? I need to see it to believe it. What does it take for us to believe?
That wasn't his plan, that was his wife's plan.
Okay, that's true. That's true. Did he go along with it?
He did, but I'm just saying, we all know wives are convincing.
Okay.
So when you asked, did he believe it, he had no reason not to.
Uh-huh.
There was nothing previously that would make him doubt or give him pause. Everything in his life up to that point, when it was spoken to him, it occurred.
Okay. So when the Ishmael thing comes along, it's his wife's doing, it's
I think the start of it. Your
Okay.
question was,
does he believe?
Right.
All right. So is he thinking, all right, this is part of God's plan that my wife is convincing me to have a child with this other woman?
maybe.
All right. Maybe, right? Okay. All right. Maybe. I don't know. Right? Might be just like biting the apple too, right? We don't want to, blame it on the ladies all the time. I get nervous about that, right? And so then a little bit later on in the chapter, right? And obviously we know how all this ties into Exodus. I mean, we know the story, right? If we move down to 12, as the sun was setting, Abraham fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to him, "Know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the fourth generation your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure." When the sun had set and the darkness had fallen, a smoking fire pot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abraham and said, "To your descendants I give this land, from the Wadi to the Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates," right? So again, right, we know the rest of the story, right? Where was Abraham at this point? And I don't know, right? This is a supposition, right? Again, we're talking about belief and what it takes us to believe. But I think that speaks to our own lives, right? What does it take for us to believe when we read in the Bible about what's happening? What does it take for us to believe when we know we're going through hard times and bad things, right? What does it take for us to believe when we're talking to other people and trying to convince them that Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior, right? How do we show them that, right? Where does belief start, right? So I just think these are all interesting things to talk about, all right? Any other comments about this before we hop into Exodus or thoughts? Okay, so we got the backbone. We know what's going on, right? So later on, right, we know in Genesis 22, right, some other kind of beliefs with Abraham. The angel of the Lord called Abraham from heaven a second time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me," right? So again, we see God's plan with Jesus. We know that's happening, all right? So let's look at Exodus 3 for just a second, if you don't mind, okay? So we're in Exodus 3, 7 through 21. I want to get there myself. So this is right after Moses has what? This is kind of where Ken was the other day. So Moses has literally first encountered God for the first time. And God is the what again? The burning bush, right? And what does Moses do when he first sees God?
Hit his face.
Hit his face. How's he feeling at this moment? At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look upon God, right? I mean, that's what we're told right there, I think, in verse 6, okay? So God tells Moses what's going to happen. Some of the same kind of promises we hear with Abraham, right? I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, and out of Egypt. Right? Do you think Moses believes him? does he have that same incredulity we talked about with the Magic Act? Is he having a hard time?
He's trying to convince God that he's not the right person.
Right. I mean, first of all, he's like, oh, why should I go? Who am I that I should go? Right? So, is he shirking duty? Is he just scared to do it? Am I a bad speaker? Where is he with all that? I'm not sure. I'm sure he's intimidated. Have you ever felt that way? Where you've had to do something and you're thinking, I think someone else should try. Right? Maybe it should be someone else's turn. Yes, sir?
I think it's really interesting because he's intimidated for the job, to do the job, but he's speaking to the God of the universe. He's asking a ton of questions.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to talk to God.
That's my favorite part, when Moses is asking the questions. And I think I have that later. Like, what do we think of Moses questioning God? Right? It's an interesting thing. Is that arrogance? Is that, being disobedient? Is it the same as Abraham? Because Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. How is he questioning him? There's lots of ways that you can go with that. All right? Yes, Chris?
A lot of it too is when they're being told this, the first thing that comes to their mind is they're killing them.
Okay.
That part of going there and trying to help them and getting killed for it is a big drop.
Sure, I'm sure he'd be scared too. Showing up in front of Pharaoh and saying, all right, you need to let all the Israelites go. We got to go worship in 3 days. I'm sure that's got to be intimidating, right? It really is.
Well, then in Exodus 4 really talks about him making excuses because he knows who he is.
Yeah.
He knows his limitations. But at that point, he doesn't understand what God can do.
Okay. Isn't that amazing that God picks us and picks people to carry out his plan who aren't perfect, right? Is Moses the leader that God needs him to be now?
No.
Or is he going to be turned and developed into the leader that God needs later? Is this the same Moses that we see in Leviticus? The same Moses that we see in Numbers? This is a different person. This is a different Moses at this point. And I think that's such a powerful, important thing to understand, that we change, we grow. We start on spiritual milk, and we move to be more mature in our walk and our journey.
Yeah, I just noticed the similarities when the Lord answers Moses and said, who's made man's mouth and who's made him? And it's kind of like what happens with Job when Job questions God and God said, look, I created this and this and this and this. And Job accepts it and said, I had heard the Lord and now I see the Lord, and Job is good. Moses, however, turns around and says, no, still send someone else.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love that. Yeah. I think we all run into that, I don't know what you call it, doubts in how do I handle this and what do I do? Whether it's being a leader or being called to do something or whatever. I think that's a perfect example. And so just to continue on, we know that Moses says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh for me to the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you. Right? Same thing he told Joshua, I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on the mountain. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? Because maybe they don't remember. It's been 400 years. Then what shall I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. Right? So I do have the question down here. Do you think he has the same level of belief and obedience as Abraham? Not so much? Not at this point, so not yet. Okay? Is he going to get there? Yes. We all have the ultimate cheat sheet in front of us. We know, right? But I think it's important to recognize and think about that a little bit, right? So getting into Exodus 4, right? That's our kind of focus point for today, right? Which is, great couple of chapters. And I feel like for some of these chapters, we're going through so fast through some of it. I feel like you could give a whole lesson just on some of these. But we are trying to cover, the majority of the book, so we're going through it. So one of the first signs that God gives to Moses is the staff into a snake, right? What if they don't believe me or listen to me when I say to you, right? And the Lord's like, well, okay, what's that in your hand? Right? You throw it down and there you go, right? You know, this goes back to the belief that we were talking about earlier that sometimes you need what? All right, evidence, right? You need something, right? Why should I believe you? Oh, you can turn a stick into a snake? Okay, maybe I should listen to this guy, okay? All right, the next thing, which to me is even more amazing, right, is that he can do what? Hand inside the cloak, pulls it out and becomes white as snow, leprous looking, right? I mean, you know, woof. That's the only good picture I could find, right? This old felt blurred picture, but I was like, okay, there we go. That gives you at least the visual of it, okay? Do you think we need those signs, those miracles, that quote-unquote magic to help us believe something?
It helps.
It does help. Why? Why do we need that, right? If you drink this, you know, salts and lemon juice and apple cider vinegar in the morning, you will lose 50 pounds, right? And then you see the picture of the person, they're like, oh, yes, look, don't they look better? I mean, do you believe that? I have not drunk the salt and lemon juice and apple cider vinegar, obviously, right? But I'm going to let, you know, Seth try it first and see if it works, right? And then I'll follow suit, right? I would like to see it with my own eyes before someone gets me to drink that. You know what I mean? But if we're told something miraculous is going to happen and we don't believe it will happen, then why is it miraculous when it does happen? Why is it a miracle? God said it was going to happen? Like you didn't believe? It's like telling the kid the stove is hot, right? That's hot. Don't touch it. Right? You know? They have to find out for themselves, correct? You know? Why are we built that way? Does that ever frustrate you? I mean, have you ever talked to your kids? I don't know, right? Charity, is that the way it works with the kids you taught? Like, you got to tell them, don't do that. That's a bad idea. It's a bad plan. And then they have to learn for themselves?
They do always have to learn themselves.
Why? Like, why can't we learn the easy way? Why can't you say, hey, if you do it this way, your life will be great. It'll be perfect. It'll be wonderful. But we don't listen. I guess human nature, I don't know. What do you think?
It's also, if I go just on you telling me that it's hot, then I go to the next person and tell them it's hot. Well, what's hot? I don't know, I just know it's hot.
I just heard that. Yeah.
But when you tell me it's hot, and okay, okay, now I know what hot is, and now I have the life experience, and now I have that belief. A lot of times, people have to go through something tragic to give them that life experience to build off of, to have a foundation to believe in.
Yeah.
If you've had this nice, perfect, easy life, the silver or platinum spoon from the very beginning, and you've never suffered anything, then what life experience do you have?
Sometimes the best experiences, like you're saying, are the ones you
Exactly.
have to go through. Exactly.
And now, once we've experienced ourselves, then we can try to explain it with faith of, trust me,
Yeah,
it's hot.
it's hot. Yeah. And we still wish people would listen, right? But yeah, it's a great point. Yes, Ms. Lott?
Faith has to play its part too,
Mm-hmm.
and because having faith doesn't mean that you have to see, feel, and touch.
That's right.
Yeah, we have to have trust and believe in the Lord, and we do that by studying His Word and knowing what it says, and just seeing the things around us and how those things happen. I had 4 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Out of those 4 daughters, there was one that would truly believe what I say. The others, they had to experience it and go through but the one that was able to believe what I said, she had a few less trials than those that did not believe.
Yes.
And that's really true.
Because ultimately, I think you don't want to get to the point where you say, you know, do I really have to believe in Jesus to go to heaven? because you don't want to have to find out the wrong way. Oh, I need to go back and have a redo. Redos don't happen, right? You know, that's not the experience you want to have, right? You know, so yes, having faith and being able to trust, right, our elders, being able to trust God, right, is a big part of it. Those are awesome points you guys are making, right? Awesome points. Okay? Yes, ma'am?
Sorry, one more thing.
No, do
I
it.
don't know that we need these things to help us believe something.
Mhm.
I think about the Hebrews who've been enslaved for what, 400 years, something like that, and they have received no signs, no miracles, no magic that we have awareness of. They've just kind of been, I mean, they have kind of been suffering.
Yeah.
They've been suffering to an extreme degree to the point where there are plots to kill all of the children, right? So they certainly don't have a sign of miracle or magic.
Yeah.
But I think we want that because we're anxious, right? And we have this sense that if we have some kind of sign, that will relieve our anxiety and our worry that God is not listening.
Yeah.
And I think the Hebrews' faith for all of that is a testament to like actual faith in suffering, right? Without those signs, although they're awfully nice.
I mean, isn't it so true? You're so right that eventually at a certain point, if it's been long enough or something's happened, we need something to hold on to, something to grasp in the midst of whatever storm you're going through, to hold on to some nugget of belief, of trust, right, or a sign that's going to get you over that hump and over that hill so your belief can settle in, right? That is a great point. Yes, sir, Roger.
Well, this might be a bit of a stretch, but I wonder
Let's
if
stretch
we
it.
could go all the way back to Genesis in the garden. You know, Adam and Eve lived in perfect communion with God
Mhm.
until the serpent said, "Hey, don't take his word for it. You got to find out for yourself."
Yeah?
And we've had that struggle. ever
We
since.
have problems since then. Yeah, I don't think that's too much of a stretch. I think that's a great point. It really is. Okay? All right, so this is something, I forget who said this, Ken maybe, right? But why does Moses question God so much? What do you think, guys? Right? You know, what kind of questions are these? Are these complaints? Are these, I don't think you got the right guy questions? Right? Like, what do you think? Like, you know, to boil it down a little more simply, if your boss told you to do something, right? Yeah, I know. And you start, I don't think you got the right guy. Why are you asking me? Right? More than likely, your boss is going to say, well, I'm never going to, you know, trust that guy to do something again, right? Or whatever, right? Ms. Charity?
I was just gonna say, Moses was human like we are.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, we don't have self-confidence, and that's okay. To not have self-confidence, because our confidence should come from God anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but Moses didn't have enough confidence in himself to realize that he didn't have to have self-confidence, that he didn't have to have any abilities, that he didn't have to have what he thought he needed, that God had it all.
Yeah.
And we just have to be confident that God has everything we need to do what it is that he wants us to do.
God's got your back. And that's a big thing behind you, right? But you, again, you have to believe that. That's a great point. Seth?
Yeah, and I think to build on Travis' point, I have never looked at it negatively, the question.
Okay.
I was came at it from the approach of a father-son scenario.
Yeah.
He's ignorant of the fact that he is questioning the creator of the universe. Like, I would never not have my boys stop asking questions.
Sure.
You know, like, from the sense of, like, yeah, ask away. Keep them coming. I'm still going to expect you to do this.
Yeah. I mean, you know, questions aren't a bad thing, right? You know, they aren't a bad thing at all. You know, I mean, you know, the old joke, you know, there's no such thing as a stupid question. They're just stupid people that ask questions, right? I mean, that's a very bad teacher joke, but you know, people say it in the coffee break room. Yes?
As someone who asks a lot of questions, I also feel like he's trying to get the lay of the land.
Yeah.
Seth can attest, I ask tons of questions about something and like a lot of what if this happens.
Mm-hmm.
Just so I mentally am prepared. I told Seth my questions are like whiskers, where I'm like trying to figure out the situation before I go into it. And so I don't see it as doubt. I mean, I see that he is self-conscious and like doubts himself, but I don't see it as him doubting God.
So definitely more of a character strength then. Okay, I gotcha. Okay. Mr. Jack?
How long has Moses known this guy? How long has Moses known God?
I don't know. 15 minutes?
Yeah. So that might have something to do with it.
It might, right? You know, can you trust and believe him, right? You know, I mean, I think it's all a very, very, very interesting thing, you know? And I just love that kind of idea of where is Moses on his belief, like Jack said. Like, is he just now learning about God? I mean, I don't think so. I think he knew that the Hebrews were his people, so I think he'd had some background in that. He was raised as a prince of Egypt, so we know we have some things. I mean, a lot of that is cloudy, right? You know, I mean, we don't know exactly, okay? Right? We got 3 different people, so I'm going to try and go as quick as I can. Yes, sir.
You also have to remember, he's talking to a burning bush.
Okay, right?
That may have just a little bit to play.
A little bit. Yeah, I mean, you know, personally, you know, I've always gone back to if God was actually speaking to me, created the universe, I'm like, yes, sir. Like that's the way, you know, I was brought up and raised. And, you know, but again, like Jack said, you know, does he know God? You know, does he have the same belief that I did? Right, Roger?
Well, I think in his earliest childhood, his mother, his real mother, was still raising him.
Yeah.
So he went into, you know, Pharaoh's daughter's care, so he had to have known of God.
Yeah.
At least as a child.
I mean, all that stuff is, you know, a little fuzzy, you know, in there. But yeah, those are some guesstimates that I kind of has made as well, right? Was there someone else I had left out? Yes, ma'am.
I think we have to think where he was emotionally too,
Mm.
because he was a prince of Egypt, he had power, he had confidence, so much confidence, and then life knocked the wind out of his sails.
Yeah.
Because he's in the desert wandering, and then he ends up being just a shepherd. His confidence is gone, so maybe that's where he is emotionally. If he doesn't have confidence in himself, it's hard to have confidence in someone else too.
We eventually get to verse 14, where what's God feeling at this point? What do we hear?
Anger.
Yeah, the Lord's anger burned against Moses. So he's obviously, God has gotten a little kind of, you know, frustrated or upset. And he's like, okay, fine. You know, what about your brother Aaron, right? He can do it, right? I mean, you know, we've got to that point, you know. You shall speak to him, put words in his mouth. I'll help both of you to speak, and he will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if it were your mouth and as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so you can perform the signs with it, okay? Now we get to one of the most interesting parts of this, right? And I don't have a great definitive answer for this. You know, you guys that have studied a lot more than me probably need to help me with this part, okay? So Moses goes back to Egypt, right? And he's getting ready to leave, you know, Jethro and all this stuff. And so, you know, what happens? You know, why is the Lord thinking about killing Moses? This is in verse 24. At the lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, touched Moses' feet with it. Surely you are bridegroom of blood to me, she said. So the Lord let him alone. At that time she said bridegroom of blood, referring to circumcision. So, I mean, I have my own answer, but what do you guys think about this?
Well, I want to go back to verse 22.
Let's go to 22.
Then say to Pharaoh, this is what the Lord says, Israel is my firstborn son. And I told you, let my son go, as he may worship you. But you refused to let him go, so I will kill your firstborn son. In effect, he's saying Pharaoh is going to kill his son.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a change here that happens that we don't get explained real well.
So you're saying that Moses is Pharaoh's firstborn son?
Well, this is what, no, Israel, he's talking
Oh,
about.
right, yeah.
And he's saying this to Pharaoh. And if he's saying this to Pharaoh, he's implying that Pharaoh's son is going to be killed. And then we see in 24, it switches that Moses' son is going to be killed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a switch here, and I don't, it's one I've talked with for a long time.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm hoping somebody has an answer that makes some sense.
We're about to find out, okay? Otherwise, we're just going to go, Lynn, explain. No, I'm just teasing. All right, yes, what do you think?
This answer is not going to be satisfactory to a lot
That's
of people.
okay, that's okay. We're looking for answers.
When I was taking Message of the Old Testament
Mhm.
at ACU, we asked about this passage. We said, tell us, Dr. Hamilton, what is happening? And he said, you know, I mourn the fact that many scrolls were burned as firewood. His professional opinion is that there are some pieces missing.
Missing verses.
Explain kind of the context here. Because he said this passage is even confusing for him in a way that a lot of pieces of the Old Testament aren't, even just like on a language level. And so that is his hypothesis, and that gives me a lot of comfort because I don't understand it.
Right, okay, all right, high-fiving each other. All right. Any other ideas? And I'll tell you what I maybe think. That's probably not correct, but I don't know. All right. Dang, I was really waiting on the answer. That's a pretty good one, though, I think. Right? I mean, I was thinking, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, that maybe God is kind of upset at him a little bit, that he hasn't followed, like, the idea that you're supposed to be circumcised, right? And this is the covenant, a little bit with Abraham. So you did not do that for your son like you were supposed to, right? And you know what? He's getting ready to take it out on him. There's also a little bit of the, is it kind of like Passover? I mean, we don't have the blood of the lamb and all that kind of stuff, but it is the idea that God was getting ready to kill him, and there is blood, there is something sacrificial, and then, okay, now God is not going to. So, I don't know. Those are some things I was thinking in my head. Lynn?
Sometimes you have to obviously infer things in Scripture.
Yeah.
But the fact that the solution to whatever this problem was, that we're not really told what the problem was, but the solution was the circumcision of the son, lets us know that's part of the problem, right? That something in there had to do with that, and God either had to command Moses and he had to obey him, or something. But Zipporah knew exactly what to do to abate the wrath of God.
Yeah.
How did she know that? Unless she knew that from her father Jethro, or from something God had already told her, right? So they understood the solution. She did at least. And so I do think there's an element here that maybe Moses had not obeyed something that God had asked him to do.
Yeah, that was the only, I thank you, because that makes me feel a little bit better, because that was the only thing I could think of is it had to do with circumcision. I mean, that's the only thing. But again, I think it goes back to, like Lynn was mentioning, like if God says to do something, you're supposed to do it, right? Yeah, I mean, that's the way that works, right? It's not an optional, it's not, okay, I'll do it when I feel like kind of thing. It is what's supposed to happen, right? And we'll see that later in Exodus with the law and plenty of other things later, right? So I mean, this is a good thing. Any other comments on this before we move on? Jack?
Yeah, I want to address the comment about scriptures missing.
Okay.
That can shake somebody's faith. To think that, well, wait a minute, I thought this book was perfect.
Right.
And if you take any time and look through this book, there's a lot of places that look like scripture is missing. And in my opinion, it probably is. But what we have to dwell on first and foremost on March the 2nd, 2026.
March the 1st, hold on now. Don't jump a day ahead.
First,
I better be.
well,
All right.
hold this until tomorrow.
Okay, all right. Then we'll remember it then.
God promised us through the Holy Spirit that we would be guided into all truth. And whether we're missing some part here in the history of Moses or not, that will not determine whether we get to heaven or not. But everything we need to build a relationship with God and His Son to obtain a future with Him is in this book, here and now.
I agree. We have what we need to have our belief. I completely agree. Okay, now getting into a little bit, yes ma'am.
The Bible told us that in Revelation, that some things, that there's some things that we is not in the book, that if we did, we could contain everything. So He let us know what we need to know.
I think that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, there are things in the Bible that I'm still trying to figure out, and I think God knows you're not ready for this, you can't handle this, right? It's not quite the spiritual milk stage, but yeah, there are some things you need to wait on. All right, so now we're in Exodus 5, the part with the bricks without straw. And I have no clue how to make a brick. I mean, I had to go look it up. I'm sure many of you guys are the same way, but you have to have the straw to what? See, I bet you all knew. I didn't have to look it up like I did.
It looks like the straw in the mud, looks like fiberglass and cement.
Exactly. That's exactly the thing I looked up. It said it's like rebar and cement. See, I think you wrote that article I read. Yeah. So, yeah, it works the same way. It holds it together because bricks without straw tend to be what? Yeah, crumbles, they don't work so good and all that kind of stuff. So Pharaoh, obviously upset when he hears, what Moses has to say, right? Who is the Lord that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go. So we know his heart's been hardened, and we know he's, adamant that he's not going to let this happen. So here comes the power struggle, right? We're getting ready to get into the plagues and all that stuff. We've read the story. We know what occurs, okay? And so when we get to the part with the bricks about straw, right, Pharaoh's whole plan is to what? Make the work harder for these people. So what happens? So what? Well, yeah. There's no straw, but so he's trying to make the work harder for them so that they will not listen to Moses, so that they will not believe. You think this guy's going to set you free? You think these signs are going to show you? I'm not going to let that happen. All right? You cannot believe these lies. You need to listen to me, right? And then I don't know if you guys have like the Ten Commandments playing in your head sometimes, we're like, what's his name? Yul Brynner's like, so it is written, so let it be done, right? Like, I can't forget that part ever. That's like one of my favorite parts, right? I just want to say that in class one time, Alyssa. I'm just going to like, Mr. Green said, so it is written, so it'll be done. And, there you go. But there we are, right? And so we get to the point where there's the, snowballing effect, right? We have the overseers, they complain to Pharaoh, right? So, we can't get this work done. The same quotas, like, what are you doing? Too bad, they're lazy, whatever, right? Then the overseers complain to Moses and Aaron, right? May the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. So, is Pharaoh's plan working? Seems like it, a little bit. Okay. So now Moses complains to God. Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Why, Lord, have you brought trouble on this people? Is this why you have sent me? Ever since I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought trouble on this people, and you have not rescued your people at all." Whew. Now, maybe you didn't read it like I just read it. I don't know, right? Maybe it's a little more complaining, right? Is this the same way Moses talks to God in Numbers? Why did you bring me these people? They're complaining about not having meats. They want quail. Oh my gosh, right? Is it the same way? Is Moses talking to a friend at that point? Maybe. I mean, isn't that kind of comforting? That you could talk to God just like a friend at that point? I don't know if he's doing that here. I do think he's kind of complaining. Do you think there's a difference between Moses and Abraham when God told him something? Moses has been told something. Abraham's been told something. Where are they? All right, I heard yes. You might have to explain a little bit.
Abraham just did.
Abraham just did. He believed the Lord, and it was what? Credited to him as what? Righteousness. Okay, right? Moses seems like he's still going into his complaining phase. He's worried. His belief is not there yet, right? But like we've been hearing in class from people, what does he have to hold on to believe? Well, he saw a burning bush, stick into a snake, right? Your hand is not leprous, so where are you with this? And I think Moses is like lots of us are. God, what is the plan? How is this going to work out? It's going to happen? How? How is it going to happen? Right? I mean, how does Exodus relate to us? That's how, right? We all get that way. So really quickly, let's look at Romans 3:21, okay, and a little bit of 4. Paul's talking about and making the argument that righteousness is given through faith. Now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been made known, to which the law and the prophets testify. This righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe, just like Abraham, just like us. Our belief in Jesus Christ, our baptism, gets us closer to God, right? We go to book 4, chapter 4. Abraham justified by faith. What then shall we say that Abraham, our forefather, according to the flesh, discovered in this matter? If in fact Abraham was justified by works, he had something to boast about, but not before God. What does the scripture say? Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness, right? He is righteous because of his faith, because of his belief. And what does it take for us to believe to get to that level with God? Roger?
Even both Abraham and Moses, even with their belief, they made mistakes.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, Ishmael would never have existed
Yeah.
if he had just simply stuck to the plan.
Yeah.
And Moses later on, after being told to not strike the rock a second time, but to speak to it, he struck it with the staff anyway. Not once, but twice. So they were still trying to do things their own way.
Yeah.
Regardless of how much faith had grown in them, they were still making mistakes.
Does that comfort you to know that these forefathers, these great men, these great leaders, right, still made mistakes, and we're still trying to figure it out, just like we are? I mean, they're still trying to figure it out. They're still trying to get there, right? Just like we are too. So how do we define Moses as a person, right? Let's end here today. Let's get ready to wrap it up, okay? We've seen some different things so far, and these are just questions or thoughts, things to throw out, right? He's chosen, right? He's drawn out of war. He's selected by God to free the Egyptians, right? Is he a murderer, right? He went and he killed somebody, right? Because he thought that was going to help solve some problems, right? This is the same guy that holds up the Ten Commandments and say, thou shalt not kill, all right? Is he confident, right? He's timid, uncertain speaker, all things to think about. What do you think about these things, all right? And what kind of a leader is he, right? And I kind of mentioned this earlier. Is he the leader that God needs him to be right now? Or is he going to become the leader that God requires? Through these experiences, through these trials, through these tests, through these things that is going on through our life, just like we do. All the trials that we experience, all the things that go on through our lives, they mold us and shape us into the person and leader and Christian, right, that hopefully God wants us to be, right? So, anybody have any other questions, thoughts, ideas? Sorry, I wasn't trying to go too fast, but I knew we were getting near the end. So next week, right, we're going to get into some of the plagues. We're going to look at how, they kind of are almost a slap into the face of the gods of the Egyptians too, right? And so it's not just, okay, here's something that's really bad happening with the frogs and stuff. Here's also something that the Egyptian gods have no control over, but God does, okay? Thank you guys for class today. I hope you have a wonderful, yes, sir?
We have a reading list if people want to read this.
Okay, yes. If you want to read, we're going to be in 6 through 8, and Ken's got the reading list right there, and you can use that to help follow along, okay? All right, thank you guys for coming today.